we can innovate on democracy at least as much as we innovate on our computers or our phones.
You also mentioned about the one person, one vote system.
Yeah.
Do you think we need to change that system?
One person, one vote is a very primitive way. Maybe the people with more people could kill the other people.
Yeah.
I hope that there will be countries like Japan and Taiwan who start saying, no, we're not going to have the same voting system. Like every election.
Yeah. はい、クロスディグ101始まります。今日のテーマはですね、世界最先端の民主主義です。で、テーマとなる本はこのプルラリティっていうこの分厚いんですけどめちゃくちゃ面白い本で、これを書いたグレン・ワイルさんというアメリカの気鋭の経済学者で、今はアメリカのマイクロソフトリサーチにいるんですね。で、彼はこの本を書いて、台湾のオードリー・タンさんと一緒に書いて、役が山形博夫さん、そして解説鈴木健さんというそうそうたるメンバーが作った本なんですけど、本当にこれおすすめです。で、ここには、民主主義の未来が書かれてるんですね。で、今日はグレンさんがボストン、ニューヨークからわざわざ来てくれたので、本人にこの本について、そして、特に今のトランプ時代に本当に民主主義って大丈夫なのか、あるいは未来の民主主義ってどうなるのかってことを聞いてみたいと思います。So, Glenn Weil, welcome to our show.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So it's been a couple of months since I last interviewed.
Yeah, not so long actually, but a lot has changed, I guess.
Yes,
yeah.
We interviewed you in a pink studio at the time.
Yeah, this is much more staid.
Much staid. So this is CROSSDIG with Bloomberg.
Wonderful.
And a lot of our audience are interested in democracy because of what's happening in the United States.
Yeah.
So I read your book in Japanese and also in English. So could you explain to our audience what plurality means and what's the topic of your book?
Well, the idea of plurality is that technology and democracy have often been in tension, but actually they can be two sides of the same coin. And actually that to really have real democracy, we need to use technology because, for example, you can't actually have a conversation with millions of people in person. But technology maybe makes it possible for us to do something like that. And on the other hand, technology to really advance, for networks to really work, we need to have those networks, having the people who are part of the networks governing the networks, giving the input to the networks to make them work. So really that democracy and technology, rather than being in conflict, can actually be expressions of each other.
So I was surprised how your views are optimistic because at this time we have tariffs, international tensions, and also technology is hurting people, like what's happening in social media. Why are you so optimistic?
Well, I don't really believe in optimism or pessimism. I think that optimism says that, you're going to like what you're going to get. And pessimism says, you aren't going to like the things that are coming to you. I believe in agency. I believe that we steer. And, either utopia or dystopia leaves no room for hope. And I very much believe in selling hope. And the reason I have hope is because it is a moment of tremendous disruption. The old things are falling away. But think about Japan. The old things offered opportunities for Japan and also a lot of challenges. It was just a constitution that was given by the United States. It was just a form of democracy that came from the West. And there's many exciting things growing up right here, right now. Citizens' assemblies, future design councils, what Ano-san did with digital democracy. These are very positive visions for the world. And the world wasn't ready for that until there was a disruption. But now it's looking. And it's an opportunity, I think, for Japan to lead.
So do you think it's a great chance for not only for Japan, for democracy itself to change or reborn?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, things are moving towards Asia inevitably. And there's an opportunity to show the world that there's the new possibility. Thomas Jefferson, one of our great presidents, said that, the Constitution can't stay the same any more than the man can wear the coat that was made for him as a boy. And so we need to adapt. We need to have a new vision of what democracy means in this age. And it's not coming from the West right now, but maybe you have an opportunity to show us what that can mean.
Not from the West, because since you mentioned Thomas Jefferson, in Japan, people think that democracy is kind of a Western thing. But you think Japan can be the center front of democracy?
Well, one reason we use the word plurality is we don't want backwards looking, some rigid historical notion of democracy. People like John Dewey, another great American philosopher, thought democracy has to constantly evolve because technology makes us all interdependent in new ways. And unless we govern those things, the new people who are interdependent govern those technologies, democracy dies. And so we need to have that dynamic vision of democracy that can keep up with all the ways that technology challenges us. And that's what I think you and Taiwan and others are starting to pioneer. And I hope we can bring that to the West.
Right. So since you mentioned Taiwan, your co-authors, actually you have a bunch of co-authors.
Yeah, yes. but the principal co-author.
First is Audrey Tan, who is the digital minister of Taiwan.
You would say Tang Otori.
Tang Otori, yes, Tang Otori. So how was working with Audrey Tan? What's your experience and what's your thoughts about Taiwan?
Well, Audrey has changed my life. I met her first in 2019 in Germany, actually, where we both have some roots. I'm a German citizen, and she spent some time growing up there. And she is just one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. She is both probably the most brilliant person I've ever interacted with, but also, and more importantly, she's just a very spiritual person.
Yes.
She's a person who, there's in the Tao Te Ching figure, the Shungren, related to what you would call Zhenren. And she very much embodies that figure. She lives that Taoist way, and she is just, she's like the air or the water.
Right.
She adapts around things, you know?
You put it in a good way, because I once interviewed Audrey and asked her whether does she find stress transforming the democracy in Taiwan? And she said she just drinks tea when she's stressed.
Yes, exactly.
So how's Taiwan different from other parts of the world? What's special about Taiwan's democracy?
Well, there are many unique things about Taiwan. I think one thing very relevant in this moment is that Taiwan has lived for a very long period of time in a state of ambiguity, in a state of in-between. What is it? Is it a jurisdiction? Is it a country? Is it China? And that ambiguity is maybe a stress and also an opportunity. To reimagine what a nation is. Taiwan is also the most technologically intensive country in the world. Most of its economy is the export of digital technology. So technology is core to who it is. Some notion of democracy is core to who it is. And also certainty is nowhere. And so that finding technology, finding democracy, making them work together, and dealing with all the ambiguity and uncertainty, I think is the source of dynamism and strength and interest in what Taiwan has built, and it's very much embodied in the work that Audrey did.
So ambiguity, uncertainty, is that plurality? Is that the definition of plural?
Well, you know, we have this little symbol that you can see here.
Okay.
And this actually captures, I think, plurality better than the word does. It's distinct things that overlap. And that is Taiwan a bit. It's China and it's Taiwan.
I see.
It's democracy and technology. And that's, I think, the essence of plurality and the essence of Taiwan.
So it's not one or zero or black or white, or it's same thing happening at the same time, simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, Taiwan, the word in the traditional Polynesian languages from which it comes, means meeting place.
Meeting place.
Like cross currents. And very much that's part of the Polynesian tradition, the people who went all over the world and brought things. And so that's the Taiwanese tradition, and it's the tradition of plurality.
So I want to continue to dive into the word plurality. Is it different from diversity, plurality?
Diversity is a fact about the world, but plurality is what we make of it. Oil exists in the world before us, but we made the engines that harness it. And that's what plurality is about. It's about how do you take the diversity that often turns into the fire of conflict and instead make it the fuel of progress.
I see. So how can you keep the society very diverse, but at the same time plural and safe and yes?
Well, it's all about building the engines that harness that rather than dissipate it. You know, you could say, how can we have all this oil around? Because it goes up in fire. And that's true. It's dangerous. But if you build things around it, it's powerful. And in Taiwan, you know, like here in Japan, they have lots of earthquakes.
Yes.
And if you don't have earthquake resilient building, this is a big problem. But if you do, then actually the island goes up by a few inches every year because of this. And so that's, I think, what plurality is all about. It's building a way to harness and be resilient to that.
Got it. So for our audience, I want to ask about examples because you touched on about education, politics. So in order to get the idea of what plurality is, could you explain, like, how can politics change in terms of plurality?
Absolutely. Well, I think the person who did the best job showing that is a Japanese person, Ano-san. Ano Takahiro, who built this open source platform 1 month ahead of the Tokyo general election and invited all the citizens to contribute to changing the platform and help them do that with his AI avatar that would explain the conversation, what were the different positions, and ask people to both contribute their view or to just try to build consensus across the existing views. And as they did, these were offered to the platform. And that platform, just in the course of a month, ended up becoming the most respected and admired by the public. He didn't win because he was a new person to politics, but Koike-san, who did win, saw the benefit of that and has now put him in the position to do long-term planning for the city of Tokyo, or for the region of Tokyo. And so that is, I think, a great example of what it is to do plurality in politics. But there's many other examples from social media, from business, from the workings of actual governments, etc. I'd be happy to talk about.
Let's talk about Anno-san, because I interviewed him when he ran for the governor of Tokyo, and he called the system broad listening. And he collected every idea from like every citizen in Tokyo. And what was interesting that he didn't try to combine the opinions, but he left it as it is, keeping plural. Do you think that's the new system, that's the new way of democracy?
Well, I think both. Which is that we have to take actions.
Right.
But we also have to have communities that continue. And in fact, the role of the actions is sometimes actually to build the communities. So there's a circular relationship between definite action and diversity of communities. Because when we work together to do something, we become together as people. And so we need to constantly do things, use that to build communities, and maintain the differences that exist.
That's the tricky part because for election, you gather a lot of opinions and different diverse opinions. But at the same time, and at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. So maybe you have to make a consensus or you have to unify your opinion. How does that not contradict with the term plurality?
Well, I think that if you have diverse groups and you build some consensus, first of all, you don't need 100% consensus. You need that you don't reinforce the existing divisions. So you need support across the diverse groups, and then you can take action based on that. But also there's going to be people who disagree diversely across the groups with that.
True.
And so that, it takes an action, but at least as importantly, it builds bridges between the supporters and the opponents. Both are building bridges across the divides. And now new divides exist. So it's that process of social change-making.
I see.
You can think of it in relationship to, how we build, children from love, but you also build love in the process, right? So you build a new family and you build something new. You see what I mean? And both of those are important parts of what happens. And it changes the relationships between the families when the children wed.
So I asked this question because I grew up in the United States and I moved back to Japan. And what surprised me is in a classroom or in an office or in politics, there are diverse opinions, but someone has to make a single opinion, single voice. We tend to unify an opinion. And that's very uncomfortable for people who have minorities or who have different opinions. So I think, how can Japan adapt the idea of plurality?
Well, I think that the point is that both the decision and the change to the social relations between people are positive outcomes from the decision-making process. And the decision should only be seen as we had to do something now. It doesn't mean that is us. It's just what we can do now
at the
together.
moment.
But the evolution of the social relations, the evolution of the social graph, is actually at least as important of an input And that's something that everyone is a part of. And the people who lost are maybe even more important too than the people who won. And so if you understand that it is that circular relationship, that the social formations and the action each feed on each other, then you don't have to be so much loser or a winner. And in fact, if you lose, if you're not part, that's now the opportunity, because now you're part of one divide. In the future, to win, they're going to have to bridge that divide as well.
So it's not a single time issue. It continues to evolve.
Yeah.
So it's like during COVID, Taiwan, they did an amazing policy on dealing masks. So they had to be on one team. But after COVID, they can also split and evolve after that.
Well, and in fact, even with the vaccines, they did that. So their policy with the vaccines was that they knew there would be anti-vaccine people. So they made teams who support the different vaccines. And they made the conflict about the different vaccine teams to avoid the conflict about, and then that evolves things as well. So not everyone wins the most vaccines, but it creates this dynamic across the people who all like those vaccines, and now you have those, and that is the basis for the next conversation.
And that's
as well.
Plural.
Yeah.
Okay. And you also mentioned about the one person, one vote system. Do you think we need to change that system?
Oh yeah. I mean, the one person, one vote is a very primitive way of doing the big goal of democracy, which is that we peacefully transfer power. Because one person, one vote just says, well, maybe the people with more people could kill the other people, and so we give them the power. But better way is that we stop reinforcing the same divisions. We don't have 51%, 49% of the same groups over and over again in society. What instead you want is that there's connections across those groups. So, you can imagine a system, for example, where if the two parties have equal numbers of people, they can pass the bill for the bill. But if it's all one party, they need 70% to pass the bill.
Interesting.
And then you can get more elaborate than that. You could have a system where the more you're allying with people you've never allied with before, the easier it is to pass. So the most powerful person becomes the one who is always able to make friends with the person who is his enemy before, right? And that would be a system, I think, that would much more achieve this goal of the peaceful transfer of power, right? And so we can innovate on democracy at least as much as we innovate on our computers or our phones. And that's the message of plurality. So of course, one person, one vote. It's very simplistic, it's primitive. There's many, many ways that we can get beyond this. Neural networks are a lot of voting as well. It's the nodes voting. So that's what we need to do. We need to be as progressive on our social organization as we are on anything else.
Do you think we should each have like 10 votes and like 5 votes for this party, 4 votes for this party, and 1 for this party?
Yeah, so I mean, that's one good system, and I developed a system like that called quadratic voting, where you have votes and you allocate them among different things, and the more you put on one thing, the less voice you get, so you don't get, extreme, and you give a little bit on many things, and that's all great. But it's just one innovation among many, There's no single thing that is the right way to vote. I think that was a very important idea, and there's many other things that we can bring in, just like I think that the Apple computer was a good idea, and now we've gone way beyond that to the smartphone and so forth. So that's the attitude we need to have. We need to see those innovations, get excited about them, scale them, deploy them, use them, and then move on and improve more.
Any new ideas for voting?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was saying, I think we need to have some voting system that thinks about social groups and not just individuals, that thinks about if you're part of this party and you're voting with other parts of the party for this, that counts for less than if you vote with someone from a different party or someone from a different region or someone from a different ethnic background or someone from anyone who you've been fighting, you should have bonus for cooperating with. And that would be like a much more plural system than just the quadratic voting. So, and then, neural networks, as I said, in neural networks, inputs come in to a node, and then the node votes basically. And then it fires if it votes over the threshold. And then there's many layers of that. So you can think of voting similar. We could give our votes to someone, that person could be a representative, and they could choose other representatives. So that's like liquid democracy is one name for that.
Yeah.
And so combining many of these things together, we have an enormous set of things to explore. And I hope that there will be countries like Japan and Taiwan who start saying, no, we're not going to have the same voting system. Like every election, we do better.
Change the voting.
Better. You wouldn't have the same phone 4 years later.
You have to update.
Yes, exactly. Every time we should be doing more and better, and we should be setting a new standard for the world. It's not about being at 90% democracy or 100% democracy. It's at being, can we be 10 times better of a democracy than you, 100 times better of a democracy than you? I think Japan and Taiwan and places like this can do that.
That's true.
And can redefine what democracy means for the world.
So it's like updating your iPhone. We have like not iPhone 3, 4, but 8 or 16 or something.
Exactly, right, yeah.
And so Japan is an aging society, and this is a very controversial issue, but some people say that maybe we need to give 2 or 3 votes to young people, like teenagers, and only 0.5 votes to elders. Do you agree on that, or do you think that's another way to?
Well, I think one thing we can just do is voting can be more fluid than that.
Fluid.
People can have even a little bit of vote before they turn 16, before they turn 14. They can do something, or they can have other ways to be civically empowered. In Taiwan, actually, people can, under the age of 18, even though they can't vote, they can work on these consensus platforms to propose a bill. And in fact, many of the bills have been proposed by people under the age of 18, even though they can't vote on the legislation. They got the bills passed. And so actually, when they turn 18, they're so busy with their career, they actually participate less civically than before. So they actually feel less civically empowered. So then the young people are really empowered precisely because they have the free time, and you give the opening. You give the open source, so that you don't need just to do the votes. You can just give them the space to contribute and give them the way to be part of it.
So maybe we can give 10-year-olds to vote, but it's not official voting, but if there's a result, the politicians should pay attention to that because it's the voice of 10-year-olds.
Well, or it's they build the consensus across the other people, and they get the legislation with the consensus across the people, and then they get it passed. They actually have more power than the people just who are voting lazily. But maybe the old people do that as well because they have the time as well. So it doesn't need to be, one or the other. It doesn't need to just be about the conflict. It needs to be about who is the fastest and most creative and most thoughtful about how they can build the bridges across the society.
So this is also plurality, plural systems of voting.
Right, exactly.
How about education? What are your ideas on education?
Yeah, so, in Taiwan, one of the most effective things that they did in education was to, instead of digital literacy, they did digital competence. So they give the students the opportunity to participate in the fact-checking, to participate in writing new fonts. So in fact, you'll see a traditional Mandarin script.
Oh yes,
in the little symbol. There that was created by students, and it became an official script of the government of Taiwan. It was done open source. So making students combine the digital with the civic and be real action, not just training. I think that's one of the most exciting things to do. And to have learning go both ways between the generations. So they send the 18-year-olds out when they're about to graduate to the small businesses locally, but not as interns, not to just learn, but to digitally transform them, to empower the young people to teach as well as to learn.
Okay. So that's interesting because they're sending the young people not as interns or part-time jobs, but actually taking part in transforming the business.
Yeah, because they know the means of payment. They know the way to advertise. They know the influencer that the older people don't know. And the older people know things they don't know, and they learn from each other.
So for the last part of the interview, let's talk about Japan and East Asia because you spend a lot of time talking about Taiwan, and you come to Japan many times. So why is
third
this
time in a year and a half? Yeah.
So why is this like new type of democracy happening in Asia? What's your observation?
Well, I think that, one reason is that democracy is younger here and people have more flexibility about what it means. They're less rigidly attached to a version of it. So I think that makes Asia a really interesting opportunity. But there's also a lot in Eastern philosophy that I think has a flexibility to deal with the complexity. Rather than the individual and the vote and society. I think many Asian people know of all the different communities, of all the different cultures, of all the different intersections. And that complexity people are more okay with. And that's what plurality is all about. It's about reflecting that. And digital technology gives us the way to make that into the formal systems that can make governmental decisions. And so there's that, I think, openness to that way of approaching things in Asia more naturally than in the West.
Do you feel that you spend some time in Japan? Do you feel it's rooted into our everyday lives?
Yeah, well, and I have to say that, the only time I've ever cried in my work was an event at MaraiCon, the last time when we talked, because I just felt the resonance between the things in Japanese society and this. I mean, Suzuki Ken-san, he wrote a book a decade ago that many people here know, the Nameraka Society, and it's
difficult to translate Nameraka. It's not. It's different from smooth. It's more
integrated, or something like this.
Anyway,
And so, but that book anticipated many of the ideas in our book by a decade. And now this morning, I went to Team Lab's Borderless exhibition here in Tokyo. And that was very much the same idea as Nameraka society. And so clearly it's ingrained into culture and experience and not just talking here in a way that's very powerful.
Do you observe something like when you get on a train, eat Japanese food, do you think there's kind of a borderless style of living in Japan?
Well, there's the overlap in that plurality thing, which is to say Japanese, I think, are very exceptionally good at, they take things from all over the world, they master them, then they hybridize them.
Like food.
You know what I mean? You often see the best of anything from anywhere in the world in Japan. And that is very much the spirit of plurality, to know and master and respect the logic and to combine that way.
So I kind of have to play the devil's advocate. I interviewed Ken Suzuki-san. He said nameraka na shakai, smooth society, and Team Lab Borders. But right now what we're experiencing is that block economy, tariffs, and people are trying to block everything. And there's borders everywhere. Do you think we can overcome this? Or do you think,
I think the world is right now looking for what that means, and the flat version that neoliberalism was about, just free trade. I think that is exhausted. And so the question is there an alternative? Is there a way to understand all the cultures, to respect them, to not just mishmash them together, but to respect and integrate? And I think that is the lesson that Japan has to offer. And I think Japan has been timid about that. It's been just trying to kind of see the West as the best. And I think there's an opportunity now to step up and to offer the models that Japan and India and Taiwan are offering as the alternative to just the top-down Chinese or the old flat West that is, or this aggressive thing that's going on. And so I think that precisely that crisis is Japan's opportunity. The opportunity for Japan, as well as Taiwan and India and places like this, to talk about what they can as an alternative. So I think that moment is the best moment, actually, to offer that.
So do you think Japan needs to more be vocal about it, to talk to the world, our ideas?
Absolutely,
Do you think we haven't done that enough yet?
I think there's a timidity that comes from another era, from the problems of another era, from where Japan had to be in another era.
True.
And I think now that era, for better or worse, is gone. And so that's an opening.
So you mentioned Anno-san. So do you feel that the next generation's up-and-coming leaders are growing much larger in Japan?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you're meeting a lot of young entrepreneurs and innovators in Japan also.
Absolutely. I think in terms of its culture of that, Japan's better than anywhere I've seen. Murai-kan being a leading example. We don't have a museum of the future and innovation in the U.S. And here it's incredibly inspiring.
Great. So I think we need to wrap up. So I highly recommend this book to our audience.
Thank you.
It's a very thick book, but it's easy to read because you can read from any chapter you want. Yes, it's a great book. And 皆さんぜひチャンネル登録もお願いします。So any final comments for our audience? Last words.
Well, I hope that people will see this as a call to action, a call to leadership,
yes.
and a call to opportunity. I think young Japanese often feel that a lot has been lost and that there isn't so much opportunity, but instead they can see that as a responsibility. The responsibility for their elders, but also the responsibility for the global community and the future of freedom that is going to be made here in Asia, much more than I think in the West. And I hope they'll assume that opportunity for leadership.
Thank you so much. So Glenn Weil, the author of Plurality, thank you so much for joining our show.
Thank you.